Since ancient times, humanity has been fascinated by questions about the future and the ultimate destiny of history. Among the topics most discussed and studied in the sacred scriptures, few generate as much interest as the role of Israel in the events of the last days. This small country, yet of monumental importance, has been at the center of prophecies, conflicts, and hopes for millennia. The question that echoes through the centuries remains: what is truly Israel's role in the end times? To answer this complex question, we need to delve into the ancient biblical prophecies, examine historical events, and understand the signs that many believe are unfolding before our eyes. The prophetic roots, ancestral promises. The eternal covenant with Abraham. It all began with a divine promise made to a man named Abraham approximately 4,000 years ago. According to the scriptures, God established an eternal covenant with Abraham, promising that his descendants would become a great nation and that through him all the families of the earth would be blessed. This promise was not only about material prosperity, but carried profound prophetic implications. The land of Canaan, which we now know as Israel and Palestine, was promised as an everlasting inheritance to Abraham's descendants, specifically through Isaac and Jacob, later called Israel. The prophecies of the prophets. The Old Testament prophets further developed these initial promises. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel, among others, received specific visions about Israel's future. These prophecies included both judgments and restorations, dispersions and regatherings. One of the most notable prophecies is found in Ezekiel 36 and 37, where the prophet describes the restoration of Israel as a nation. The famous vision of the Valley of Dry Bones has been interpreted by many as a prophetic reference to Israel's rebirth as a nation after a period of national death. The prophetic pattern, dispersion and restoration. The Great Dispersion. Israel's history has been marked by a consistent pattern of dispersion and restoration. The first major dispersion occurred when the Babylonians conquered Jerusalem in 586 BC, taking the Jewish people into exile. After 70 years, as prophesied by Jeremiah, there was a partial restoration. However, the most significant and lasting dispersion began in AD 70, when the Romans destroyed the Second Temple and expelled the majority of the Jewish people from the Promised Land. This event marked the beginning of nearly 2,000 years of exile, known as the Diaspora. Signs of modern restoration. The 20th century witnessed events that many prophecy scholars consider direct fulfillment of the ancient biblical predictions. The Zionist movement of the late 19th and early 20th centuries resulted in the gradual return of Jews to their ancestral land. In 1948, something many considered impossible happened. Israel was declared an independent nation. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, there existed a sovereign Jewish state in the Promised Land. This event was seen by many as the literal fulfillment of the prophecies concerning Israel's restoration. Specific prophecies of the last days. The regathering of the nations. Several biblical passages speak of a final regathering of the Jewish people from all parts of the world. Isaiah 11:11-12 mentions that God will extend his hand a second time to reclaim the remnant of his people, and will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. This prophecy has found remarkable fulfillment in modern times. Since 1948, Jews have returned to Israel from more than 100 different countries, including large migrations from the Soviet Union, Ethiopia, and other nations. Israel's law of return, which grants citizenship to any Jew wishing to immigrate to Israel, has facilitated this process. The restoration of the land. Ezekiel 36:8-10 prophesies that Israel's desolate land would bloom again. But you, O mountains of Israel, will produce your branches and bear your fruit for my people Israel, for they are about to come. The transformation of Israel's land since 1948 has been extraordinary. Through advanced irrigation, agriculture, and reforestation technologies, Israel has turned vast desert areas into fertile and productive lands. The country now exports agricultural products worldwide, becoming a global leader in agricultural technology. Jerusalem as a global center. Many biblical prophecies place Jerusalem at the center of the last days' events. Zechariah 12:2-3 declares, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all the peoples round about. On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all peoples. All who lift it will surely be crushed." The disproportionate importance of Jerusalem in modern world politics is notable. Despite being a relatively small city, Jerusalem frequently dominates international headlines and is the subject of intense political and religious dispute. Signs of modern times. Technological developments. Biblical prophecies about the last days include references to developments that only became possible in the modern era. The book of Revelation mentions events that can be broadcast worldwide instantly, something unimaginable until the advent of television and the Internet. Daniel 12:4 prophesies that many will run to and fro and knowledge will increase. The exponential growth of knowledge and speed of travel in recent centuries is seen by many as a fulfillment of this prophecy. Conflicts in the Middle East. Ongoing tensions in the Middle East, particularly surrounding Israel, are seen by many prophecy studies as preparation for the last days conflicts described in the Scriptures. Ezekiel 38 and 39 describe a great battle involving Israel and a confederation of nations, many of which can be identified with modern countries in the Middle East and beyond. The revival of Hebrew. One of the most specific and remarkable prophecies was the revival of the Hebrew language. Zephaniah 3:9 declares that God would give pure lips to his people. For nearly 2,000 years, Hebrew existed only as a liturgical and academic language. Its resurrection as a spoken language in modern Israel is seen as an extraordinary prophetic fulfillment. Different theological interpretations. The dispensationalist perspective. Dispensationalism, a school of biblical interpretation developed in the 19th century, sees Israel as having a central and literal role in the last days events. According to this view, God has distinct plans for Israel, the earthly people, and the church, the heavenly people. Dispensationalists believe that after the rapture of the church, Israel will undergo a 7-year period of tribulation, during which a Jewish remnant will turn to the Messiah. This period will culminate in Christ's second coming and the establishment of a millennial kingdom centered in Jerusalem. The preterist interpretation. Preterists, on the other hand, argue that many prophecies about Israel were already fulfilled in the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. According to this view, the prophecies about the last days referred to the end of the Old Testament era, not the literal end of the world. Replacement theology. Some Christian groups adopt replacement theology, which argues that the church has replaced Israel as God's chosen people. From this perspective, the promises made to Israel now spiritually apply to the church, and modern Israel has no special prophetic significance. Contemporary events and their implications. The unification of Jerusalem. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel captured the old city of Jerusalem, unifying the city for the first time since AD 70. This event was seen by many as prophetically significant, especially in light of Jesus' prophecy in Luke 21:24 about Jerusalem being trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. The Abraham Accords. The recent normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab nations, known as the Abraham Accords, are seen by some as a potential fulfillment of prophecies about peace in the Middle East. However, the scriptures also warn of a deceptive peace that will precede the final events. The question of the Third Temple. One of the most discussed prophecies regarding the last days is the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem. Several biblical passages, particularly in Daniel and Revelation, reference a functioning temple during the end-time events. Currently, organizations in Israel are actively preparing for the temple's reconstruction, including training priests, crafting temple utensils, and even raising red heifers as specified in Mosaic law. Global implications. Israel as a prophetic clock. Many prophecy scholars see Israel as God's prophetic clock, an indicator of the prophetic time in which we live. Israel's rebirth as a nation is viewed as the beginning of the final generation